Hey, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Thanks again for tuning us in. Welcome to today's episode, Monday, July the 30th, where we continue our 31 teams in 31 days with the Montreal Canadiens. Mark Bergevin, what are you doing to this team? Once again, B&B Hockey Talk. Let's get into this. Montreal Canadiens. Let's start off right away with what their team looks like. Matthew, take us through what you think their potential forwards are going to be. And is Max Pacioretty going to be here when the season starts? What's going on? Let's go.
Oh man, yeah, the mess that is the Montreal Canadiens. So for starters, the top line I have is Max Pacioretty, Jonathan Drouin, and Brendan Gallagher. The big thing here is Max Pacioretty. Will he be with the Montreal Canadiens? All the reports were saying that Montreal was looking to trade him ASAP out of there. There was a potential deal with the Kings, but I think with the Kings signing Ilya Kovalchuk, that basically undid any work there. Jonathan Drouin, I think they're still going to try him out at center, even though I think he is better on the wing. With the pace that he plays at and the speed, it's a lot easier if he can get going up the wings and the center to feed him up the ice. And Brendan Gallagher, what can you say about this guy? The little tenacious player, but he can put the puck in the net. 31 goals last year, and is still on a really good year at $3.75 million for the next 3 years. I think he could potentially be the next captain of the Canadiens if Pacioretty is traded. The second line I have is Max Domi, Philippe Deneau, and Joel Armia. Domi and Armia both brought in via trades this offseason. Domi for Alex Galchenyuk, which some fans in Montreal are a little bit upset about, with Galchenyuk being a younger player in the organization that could be a centerman. But he never really got going between the wing and the center and inconsistencies. But Domi, he's sort of along the same lines as Galchenyuk. He did have a couple of good seasons, but last year he was a bit inconsistent and wasn't able to put the puck in the net much for Arizona. And Joel Armia, who played with Winnipeg the last couple of years, was a first rounder with Buffalo. And could potentially get a more offensive role with Montreal's lack of depth on the wings. And with Philippe Deneau, hopefully he's recovered from the Zdeno Chara slap shot he took to the head. Man, that was one of the toughest things to watch, man. It's just crazy. He did get a nice new deal in the offseason and could be that second or third line center potentially. The third line I have is Charles Hudon, Thomas Plekanec, and Paul Byron. Plekanec returning after just that half season in Toronto at the trade deadline. He comes back to give them some more depth. Charles Hudon actually had a pretty good rookie season, 10 goals and 30 points in 72 games. I think Montreal's hoping that he continued to develop and get hopefully to that 40, 50 point range this season. And Paul Byron, he's actually been a pretty consistent forward for them, with ranging around that 20 goals, 40 point range. He should be a good depth forward. And the fourth line I have is Arturi Lehkonen, Jacob Delarose, and Andrew Shaw. Shaw will bring that grit to that fourth line. And Delarose is finally got some good playing time in Montreal last year after spending most of the years in the minors the past few years. And he actually had a pretty good tournament for Sweden at the World Championships after when Montreal was eliminated. And as extra forwards, I have Nicolas Deslauriers, who they brought in a trade partway through the season with Buffalo. He's a tougher player, so if they need some more grit, they can throw him in the lineup. And Matthew Pekka, who they signed from Tampa Bay this offseason. He's a really small forward. He's only about 5'9", which Montreal, they love their small players, apparently. He had 46 points in 63 games. in the American League, but he also had 5 points in 10 games for Tampa Bay. And with Montreal's lack of depth at center, could get a good look in the center ice position.
For me, I've always said Brendan Gallagher, because when he was with the G-Men here in Vancouver, with the Vancouver Giants, I've always said he would have looked great in a Vancouver Canucks uniform. I don't think that's possible at this point in his career, but man, does that guy wear his heart on his sleeve. And I'm excited to have Max Domi in a Canadian market. I mean, he started off with signing when he came over to Montreal in his press conference saying, "I hate the Leafs." And that is going to be fun to watch this year because if he's anything like his father was, that rivalry all of a sudden gets even more heightened. But, being in Canada, watching CBC hockey, we're going to see a lot more of Mr. Max Domi this year. That's going to be exciting to see him. So let's get into their defense. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and with Max Domi, it is nice watching that video of him one-punching Ryan Kessler out over and over again.
Well, let's get into the defense. I mean, obviously a huge blow for them as they're going to be without their captain. Actually, he's not their captain, but he should be their captain, Shea Weber on defense, until at least they're saying the end of December. And that's just an absolute shame because they had injury problems last year. And with him out, that just, it really exposes how young and inexperienced this defense is. But we'll start with some of their guys that are experienced, Carl Alsner and Jeff Petrie. Petrie's going to be given a lot of the load since they're paying him $5.5 million a season right now, which is absolutely insane money for that guy. I mean, I remember when he was playing with the Edmonton Oilers, and he was just in and out of the lineup. But Petrie's obviously, I think they've overpaid for him a lot. But one of the guys, and the next pairing here is a guy to watch for, a young guy, rookie last year, Victor Mete, along with pretty steady stay-at-home defenseman, the bearded one, Jordy Ben. And they're going to make up your second pair there. The third pair is going to be open. But I can tell you that David Schlemko will probably be one of those two. The other one's going to be a bit of a battle between rookie Noah Jolson, Mike Riley, Xavier Ouellette, and, of course, they have trying out, some of the Penguin fans might remember him, Simone Dupree. And they're going to at least create some competition for those depth positions. What do you think of their defense before bringing us into their goaltending?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of problems with Shea Weber being out of the lineup. Excuse me. But, yeah, it is interesting with Weber, all these injuries that sort of happened. Because all those years with Nashville, he never really had any big injuries or anything. But now, as soon as he sort of turned 30 years old, he started going downhill with injuries. And Petrie offensively has been pretty good. But if you're relying him to be a shutdown defenseman, that hasn't really been his strong suit. And Carl Alsner really struggled after getting that huge contract that they gave him. I think over $4 million for a defensive defenseman.
And I love how Carl Alsner said that he was signing with the Montreal Canadiens because he wanted to win a Stanley Cup instead of re-signing with the Washington Capitals.
But yeah, lots of BC boys here on this team, though, with Jordy Ben from Victoria and then Noah Juleson from my hometown of Abbotsford. And I think he should get a good shot on that bottom pair. I think he didn't really look out of place when they called him up towards the end of the year. He really started to fit in, and he's got an NHL body and physicality on that back end. The one interesting name that I would like to see that they did get from a trade from Minnesota is Mike Riley. This guy does have a lot of offensive upside. I think he had 18 points in 57 games last year and could be a power play quarterback with a lack of offense from their back end. It would be interesting to see where Victor Mete takes this game from his rookie season last year. He played really well with Shea Weber at the beginning of the season before Weber got hurt. So if that sophomore slump hits him, or if not, will be interesting to see.
Well, a couple more BC connections on that defense. Carl Alsner from Burnaby, and of course Shea Weber from Sicamous, British Columbia. So let's talk about who I still think, when healthy, is the best goalie in the entire NHL, along with maybe the worst goalie in the NHL. Let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens goaltending.
All right. So, yeah, Carey Price will be returning to net, starting his new 8-year contract with a $10.5 million cap hit, which we'll see how that works out for Montreal. Overpaying a little bit for a goalie, even though the goalie is relatively the best, should be your best player every night. But it's a little overpaid, I think, for Carey Price. Last year, he really struggled with his play and with injuries, with dealing with concussions. He only had a .900 save percentage and a goals against average of over 3, which will not cut it whatsoever. And especially with Montreal, who rely so heavily on him to win games by 1 goal or only let in 1 goal or less, because they do struggle offensively to put that puck in the net. Being as they were 29th in goals for this past year, so that's a really big problem if he isn't on the top of his game. Their backup goalie, Antti Niemi, he bounced around a lot last year, starting off with Pittsburgh and then going to Florida and then to Montreal. Niemi, well, his first few games with Pittsburgh and Florida were against like huge heavyweight teams like Tampa Bay and Chicago. I believe he was partly in for that 10-goal game that Chicago had at the beginning of the season. And once when he got to Montreal, he actually did settle in a little bit, but I wouldn't rely on him too much as a backup goalie. And their third stringer will be Charlie Lindgren, who they gave a 3-year extension to. He played mostly in Laval last year, but Laval, well, to put it plainly, sucked last year. So his numbers weren't really that good in the American League, only having 8 wins in 37 games. But his play was up and down in the NHL. He went 4-8-2, and he had 2 shutouts as well with a couple of his wins. So he is a prospect that could be pushing Niemi for that backup spot.
Well, I mean, Carey Price, it's been well documented. He's had a few injuries the last couple of years. I know his back's also hurting from carrying this team for so long. But I think he's gonna, I'm hoping he has a great rebound of a year. But, he really does give them an opportunity to win every single night, which is really nice, especially for a team that's getting younger and a team that's still not sure which direction they're going in. So I really like Carey Price. I love him on Team Canada. To me, he's the best goalie in the NHL, best goalie in the world. And he's going to have to do some miraculous things in order to continue to let Montreal even have a shot this year at moving up in the standings. So let's get into some of their prospects. I'm going to start us off with my favorite guy, and who I think was completely threw the draft off the board this year. But Montreal addressed the need at center ice by drafting Jesperi Kotkaniemi out of the Finnish Elite League. He had 29 points in 57 games, and he only had 1 point in 7 games in the playoffs. But in the 18 and under World Juniors, he had 9 points in only 7 games. And he's a big, strong centerman, which they felt they really needed to address. They really liked this guy. They literally, a lot of scouts had him listed at 10, 12, 14 overall, and Montreal drafted him, I believe, 4th overall. A really high pick. What's that?
3rd overall.
3rd overall, okay. That was 1 off. But, yeah, they really threw everything off. I mean, they overlooked Philip Zadina. They overlooked, Quinn Hughes, and it really threw the draft for a loop this year. So they're really high on this guy. I'd be shocked if he doesn't get every possible opportunity to make this team this year, because of how they feel about him. They feel he's NHL ready. He has an NHL body, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Some of the players we've already mentioned are still considered prospects. So Matt's going to fill us in with some of those guys, and then he's going to jump into a few we haven't mentioned yet, and what their impact's going to be like on this team. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, yeah. So most of their prospects, for the most part, have been tweeners, meaning they've been up and down between the NHL and the American Hockey League. The one guy I'll start off with is Nikita Sherbak, who was their first rounder in 2016. He had 30 points in 26 games in the American League, and had 4 goals and 6 points in 23 games. 26 games, my bad, in the NHL. This guy could potentially be a scoring winger for them this year, with their lack of depth on the wings, and lack of offensive ability on the wings. I could see him being on the third line this year. Noel Juleson, who we brought up earlier, I think will be with the Montreal Canadiens to start this year. A few other guys, Michael McCarron, big center iceman, first rounder from 2013. Had 24 points in 57 games in the American League, but he only had 1 point in 18 games in the NHL. He is a guy that has an NHL body, and when they drafted him, we're pretty high on him because of their lack of height just in their lineup, him being about 6'6" or something like that. But he still hasn't developed into that player that they've wanted. Their other first rounder from 2017, Ryan Poling, another big center iceman, will be returning to college this year. Had 31 points in 36 games in the NCAA. He's another center iceman that they're pretty high on, but he's still a few years down the road from making this team. And lastly, I have Kirby Reichel, who they got in a trade from Toronto to Montreal. He was a first rounder way back in 2013 with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's always had really good numbers in the American League, but for some reason, just hasn't been able to crack an NHL roster, or hasn't really been given an opportunity when he has been up in the NHL. To rise to that potential that he was drafted for. But he did have 2 points in 4 games in the NHL with Montreal. So he could potentially get a look possibly on the third line with them. And I forgot, I always got to throw in the top goalie prospect, Michael McNiven, who I believe played for Canada at the World Juniors. Might not have been the starting goalie. But he had a 6-16-1 record. But with Laval being as bad as they were, and I believe this was his first year pro, it could look for improvement this year.
Excellent. Yeah, they've got some potential guys. Not a lot of high blue chippers. I mean, Kokanemi is obviously their highest blue chip prospect, but they have a lot of youth. We noted outside of a handful of forwards. Plekanec and Pacioretty help bring their average age up, but their forward unit are all around the 23, 24, 25 range. So they are still fairly young, in my opinion. 71 points last year. I want to tell everybody that I think they will improve on that a little bit. I want to say they're going to get last in their division, but there's another team called the Ottawa Senators that are going to be even worse this year. So it's hard to say that, but I think they'll improve on the 71 points, maybe 75, 80, but I don't see them getting that much more past that, only because of the big Shea Weber injury and Carey Price's question mark when it comes to his health.
Yeah, I have them between Detroit, Montreal, and Buffalo battling ahead of Ottawa for some of those bottom 3 spots in the East. Carey Price could, if he gets back to his game, could steal them a few more points than they did last year. But it's going to be another rough go, like we know in Vancouver over the past few years. It'll be another rough go in Montreal.
Well, I know Montreal fans hate when we say this, but we both think that there'll be another Toronto-Boston playoff matchup this year. and Montreal will be on the outside looking in. But anyways, guys, thanks so much again for listening or watching our show again today. Remember to hit that like button, leave us a comment, share our program, let your friends know about us, invite them to like our page, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. Thanks again so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of 31 Teams in 31 Days, featuring the Nashville Predators. This is Aaron Bloxel with Matthew Balzer. Thanks again for watching B&B Hockey Talk. We'll see you all tomorrow.